Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So it sounds like Xbox is working on an iconic franchise that has fans more than just a little bit excited. And when you really start to think about it, Xbox does have access to a lot of quote-unquote iconic franchises now, with that inclusion of Bethesda games. And with that, the Xbox Series is going to get some pretty big exclusives this generation, and it sounds like one franchise is going to be coming back sooner rather than later, so we're going to go over that one today. Then also, the PlayStation 5 looks to have fixed a major issue the fans were very concerned about earlier this year. This is something that I've really liked what we've seen from Sony over the last 12 months because it does appear that they are listening to fans, so we will talk about that one as well. In fact, to start today off, we're going to talk about PlayStation as they did reveal the PlayStation Now lineup for the month of November. And this is actually quietly a pretty decent lineup. If you take a look here, PlayStation Now will be getting Mafia Definitive Edition, Celeste, Final Fantasy IX, and then Totally Reliable Delivery Service. And like I said, I think this is quietly a good lineup of games here. Celeste is actually one of the best platformers to release in the last decade. Final Fantasy IX is an all-time great JRPG, and then Mafia Definitive Edition didn't release all that long ago, and it's a pretty decent game as well. So I think that if you have PlayStation Now, there's definitely some games to look forward to here, though per usual, anytime we talk about PlayStation Now, you have to look at the fine print. I seriously say this every single time, but it's always true. If you take a look at the fine print, Mafia Definitive Edition will only be available until February 28th of 2022. I'm just repeating myself by this point, but I still don't like this. I still think that they need to extend these contracts a little bit more. Only having this game for 3 to 4 months is just not going to cut it, in my opinion. But nonetheless, it's still a good game, and if you have the time, definitely check it out on PlayStation Now. Either way, definitely check out Final Fantasy IX and Celeste, as those games are absolutely fantastic. Moving on, we do have a bit of unfortunate news for Nintendo and anybody looking to buy a Nintendo Switch throughout the rest of the year, and that is because the chip shortages have majorly impacted the Nintendo Switch during their fiscal year. Now, a lot of times when we talk about these chip shortages, we tend to focus a little bit more on the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 because these two consoles have been incredibly difficult to buy since they first launched. These consoles sell out within minutes, but at the same time, the Nintendo Switch has been majorly impacted by the global chip shortage as well. While the Nintendo Switch is a little bit easier to find, it's still sold out multiple times throughout the year, and we're really seeing that with the Nintendo Switch OLED, and it's starting to make sense as Nikkei is reporting that due to chip shortages, Nintendo has reduced Switch production by 20% throughout the fiscal year. Now, that number doesn't completely justify just how big of a reduction that really is, though. To just kind of put this into perspective, they were previously planning to ship 30 million consoles in the fiscal year, meaning that with this 20% reduction, that number is actually reduced by 6 million units worldwide. So instead of shipping out 30 million consoles during the fiscal year, they're actually going to ship out 24 million, which, I mean, that's still impressive. But that's still 6 million consoles that they could not make because they just don't have the chips to make them. That's 6 million fans out there that doesn't get the console that they want. I mean, you have to keep in mind that the Nintendo Switch is still the hottest console on the market in terms of units sold. While the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 are new products and those things are selling out insanely fast, that hasn't slowed down the Nintendo Switch at all. This console really has been selling at a record-breaking pace, and that 6 million reduction is going to hurt not only Nintendo, but also fans worldwide. With the Switch OLED just releasing, the Switch is going to continue to be a hot item this holiday, and this is 6 million less units. That's going to be a lot of fans that's disappointed throughout the holiday, and for that matter, with the Switch selling at a record-breaking pace, there has always been that question, can the Nintendo Switch become the best-selling console of all time? And when you see a reduction by 6 million units, that does hurt that projection and whether or not it can pass consoles such as the Nintendo DS or the PlayStation 2. Those consoles sold over 150 million units worldwide, so every little bit's going to matter for the Nintendo Switch if it wants to catch those consoles. And I mean, we are getting closer and closer to that Nintendo Switch successor, so it will be very interesting to see what happens, but it's so unfortunate to see the semiconductor issue just continue on and on. It's affected the Xbox Series, it's affected the PlayStation 5, and it's also affecting the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully we start to see this improve throughout 2022, but based off what Intel said, we could see this problem last into 2023. Now, we also got some Xbox news to talk about, as it looks like Bethesda has something cooking that I think fans are really going to be excited about. See, the thing about this Xbox Bethesda acquisition is that we really haven't seen the true impact or the true extent of what this acquisition is going to do for Xbox just yet. They did acquire Bethesda earlier this year, but like a lot of the studios Xbox has acquired, we haven't really seen the output from their studios, or at least just yet. Now, they did bring over a lot of Bethesda games to Xbox Game Pass, and it's also brought a lot of excitement over to the Xbox Series as well. But when we're really going to see the impact of what Bethesda can do for Xbox is when they start to release their storied franchises on Xbox. And when you think about Bethesda, there's a few franchises that really stands out, and that would be the Elder Scrolls with games like Skyrim. You also have the Fallout franchise, and then Doom. Doom is one of the historically great first-person shooter franchises, and all of these games in the future will be exclusive to Xbox. That's what I'm talking about with the true impact of this acquisition. With franchises as big as these and them coming to Xbox consoles exclusively, also with the inclusion of PC, this will be huge for Xbox and Xbox Game Pass. And it does sound like Bethesda, or actually id Software to be specific, might be working on one of their most storied IP. id Software does have a number of job vacancies that apparently is for a long-running, iconic action first-person shooter that immediately is going to limit it down to just a few different games. We'll get into that here in just a moment, but they do say that they're looking for someone to join its existing team to provide AAA quality sci-fi and fantasy environmental vistas and skyboxes. Like I said, this narrows it down to just a couple of games here, and it more than likely is going to be between Doom or Quake. Now, some people have been pointing out that maybe it could be for the Wolfenstein franchise, though in recent years, Machine Games has actually been the studio to work on Wolfenstein, while id Software has been focusing on Doom, Quake, and then Rage. So really, I do think that this will probably be between Doom and Quake at the end of the day, both of which are historically great first-person shooters, so you really can't go wrong with either one. But I think that if it comes down to it, Xbox probably does want an exclusive Doom game for Xbox. I think Doom would probably be the bigger system seller here, both in terms of Xbox Series consoles as well as Xbox Game Pass. So I think that they'd probably push for that a little bit more, though at the same time, I would be kind of interested in seeing a new Quake game as well. Like I said, I don't really think that you can go wrong either way here. The one thing is for certain here, id Software is working on an iconic first-person shooter franchise, whether it be Quake or Doom. This is going to be big for Xbox, and you start to see why this Bethesda acquisition is so big this generation. They are going to get some big exclusives, and it sounds like that's going to start next year. You have Starfield releasing in 2022, Redfall is coming out next year, which is coming from Arcane Studios, which has consistently put out high-quality games such as Prey. You have Dishonored as well as Deathloop, which is a legitimate Game of the Year candidate for this year. You also have the Elder Scrolls 6 in development, and possibly, it sounds like id Software is either working on Doom or Quake. So that is a lot of big games coming from Bethesda in the coming years, and you can start to see why this acquisition is going to be so impactful. Let me know in the comments below, though, on which game you prefer id Software to work on. Would you rather it be Doom, Quake, or something completely different such as Wolfenstein or maybe even Rage? Let me know in the comments below. Now, we also got some really good news for the PlayStation 5 today, as it looks like they fixed that CBOMB issue. Now, this is something that fans were really concerned about earlier this year, as it was discovered that both the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 had issues with game preservation. Basically, what was happening is that if your CMOS battery would die, which inevitably will happen eventually, that means you would no longer be able to play your games until you replace the CMOS battery. And while you can easily replace the CMOS battery, to make matters worse, you would actually have to reconnect with the PlayStation servers to play your games. And the concern with that is that we don't know what's going to happen 20, 30 years down the line. If we go back and play these games, will the PlayStation servers still be up to actually reconnect to? So that's where the concern comes in when it comes to game preservation. So fans were rightfully upset about this, but the good news is that Sony is actually listening. Back in September, they did push out an update that fixed the PlayStation 4, but now it appears that they fixed the PlayStation 5 as well. It's now being reported that even if your CMOS battery dies, the PlayStation 5 will still be able to play its games. As you can see here with Does It Play's tweet, the physical PlayStation 5 games that were having trouble installing before are now installing and working fine. PlayStation 4 physical games install and work fine. PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 digital games now work with a dead battery, though PlayStation Plus games do not work with a dead battery. So overall, it does seem like PlayStation listened here, and this is something that I've really liked from Sony within the last year or so. PlayStation's PR has taken a bit of a beating online over the last year or so, as they have made some questionable decisions, especially leading up to that PlayStation 5 launch. There was a lot of questions about backwards compatibility back then. They said some pretty misleading things as well, including they believe in generations. That appears to be a flat-out lie. But throughout 2021, PlayStation has shown that they're willing to listen to their fans. Earlier this year, they backtracked on removing the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita store, as fans heavily criticized them for that, and now once again we're seeing them listen with the CBOMB as well. So it's really good to see that PlayStation is listening to their fans. Next up, a game that we talked about yesterday was a new Marvel game that's being developed by Skydance New Media. And there's some real excitement surrounding this game right now, as Amy Hennig is working on this project. Now, Amy Hennig has worked on games such as the original Uncharted trilogy in the past. She was the lead writer as well as the creative director, so she's got some real talent, and it's exciting to see what she could possibly be working on in the Marvel universe. But that's kind of the thing. What Marvel IP are they working on? And while there's still a lot of mystery that surrounds that, we now know at least one of the actresses that's working in this game, and that would be Janina Gavankar. She revealed this over on Twitter by saying this: "I can finally tell you this. This is what I've been so lucky to be a part of." And this reveal has brought forth a lot of speculation as to who exactly she's playing as, and it seems like the community is kind of zeroing in on one specific IP, being one that I personally really want to see, being Daredevil. Yeah, there's a lot of belief that she could possibly be playing as Elektra, which I've said this in the past. I'm not necessarily the biggest Marvel fan in the world, but I really do like Daredevil a lot. I don't know why. I've always liked Daredevil. I think it can make for a good game. And if Skydance really is working on a new Daredevil game, you are going to see me go crazy about this if this is actually true. I have a lot of belief in Amy Hennig. The original Uncharted trilogy are some of my favorite games of all time. I've said that several times on the channel. I love the Daredevil IP, so this just seems like a dream game for me, so I'm really hoping this is true. With that said, I still have some doubts because I don't know if there's really any concrete proof that they are working on a Daredevil game. I think it's just kind of a hope right now among fans, because there's obviously a lot of different female Marvel characters, so this could be a number of different characters. What we do know, though, is that early signs are pointing to this game having quite a bit of talent behind it, so definitely excited to see what exactly they're working on. Let me know in the comments below, though, if they are working on a Daredevil game. Would you like that or not, or would you prefer them work on a different IP completely? Let me know exactly what Marvel IP you would like to see them work on the most. Moving on over to the poll of the day, though, this is actually a big month for the Xbox brand. November 15th actually marks the 20th anniversary for Xbox, as the original Xbox launched on November 15th of 2001. It's almost hard to believe it's been that long, but with the 20th anniversary quickly approaching, I wanted to ask you all which Xbox console is your favorite. And the results here actually really surprised me, because if you take a look here, you can see only 5% of you chose that original Xbox, 37% was Xbox 360, 5% Xbox One, and then 47% being the lead, being the Xbox Series. That is a little surprising for me, because I thought the Xbox 360 would come away as the winner here. Now, that's no disrespect to the Xbox Series or anything like that, because I think it's a great console, but at the same time, the Xbox Series isn't even a year old yet, so a little surprised to see it come away as the winner here, but I do understand the excitement around this particular console. I actually do believe that it will end up being the best Xbox console in the long run. It has Xbox Game Pass, and they have a ton of studios this generation. We talked a little bit about it earlier in the episode with games like Doom. We have The Elder Scrolls coming out, Starfield, you have Redfall, and that doesn't even include games like Gears of War, Halo, which, Xbox has been known for throughout the years. Forza. We have Forza coming out in just a week or so. So I do think by the end of this generation, the Xbox Series will likely be the best console that Xbox has ever made. It's got power, it's got games, and it also has the services with things like Xbox Game Pass. Even then, though, I still have to give some respect to the Xbox 360, as I just thought that was such a great platform. I mean, it was a very unreliable platform. The Red Ring of Death was a very real problem, but I have so many great memories with that console, whether that be with games like Halo. I loved Gears of War. So much of my time was spent playing that original trilogy, and it helped revolutionize online gaming in general with Xbox Live Gold. So I have to give a lot of props to the Xbox 360, but again, I do understand why a lot of you all would go with the Xbox Series, as that console has so much potential. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.